You know, the Middle East has always been a historical powder keg, but recent intelligence suggests a fuse was just lit in a place that absolutely no one expected. Welcome to today's Explainer. I'm your host, and I've been digging through the latest intelligence dossiers. We're currently tracking a shocking, unacknowledged military installation that is literally sending shockwaves through the international community. For decades, hostilities here have operated under strict, unspoken, covert rules. But the ground truth we're unpacking today, well, it suggests those rules have been entirely thrown out the window. We're looking at a severe escalation that has the potential to fundamentally redraw the map of conflict in the region. Let's get right into it.
So, the core of our dossier today revolves around a pretty explosive revelation. Recent reports are claiming that Israel has established a highly classified covert military base. And get this, it's located deep inside Iraq's western desert. And we aren't just talking about some small temporary listening post. Sources are describing this as a full-on forward launch platform. Now, here is where the story gets incredibly tense. According to these reports, the Iraqi government had absolutely no idea this installation even existed within their own borders. Meanwhile, multiple sources allege that the United States actually maintained awareness of the operation but chose to remain publicly silent. So that shadow war that's defined this region for years, it's officially stepped directly into the light.
Okay, let's dive into this real quick, because to understand the gravity of the situation, we really have to grasp the concept of a shadow war. It's exactly what it sounds like, right? A conflict fought entirely in the dark. Historically, between Israel and Iran, this has meant cyber sabotage, proxy militias, secret intel operations, and targeted assassinations. Both sides have always gone to massive lengths to avoid direct, public, military-on-military confrontation. It gives them a crucial layer of plausible deniability. But if you establish a physical, forward-operating military base in an oblivious third-party country, that completely rewrites those historical rules of engagement. It's a massive jump from the shadows straight to a tangible, boots-on-the-ground reality.
Now, what's really interesting about this next slide is the geography. If you look at it, the strategic logic behind such a daring move actually makes a lot of sense. Western Iraq offers a massive advantage. You're just way closer to Iranian territory. Operating from a hub right here means aircraft, surveillance drones, and special forces are cutting huge distances off their travel times. But more crucially, the facility reportedly housed emergency search and rescue teams. And these teams were specifically tasked with recovering pilots shot down over Iran or the neighboring areas. Look, you don't station search and rescue teams of that caliber for a single isolated strike. This heavily suggests they were planning for sustained, long-range operations. This outpost was clearly built for endurance.
So you might be wondering, how does a massive secret military installation just unravel? Well, it happened in real time, and it actually started with the simplest of observations. For months prior, this desert outpost reportedly remained entirely invisible. No announcements, no authorizations, nothing. But then, residents in these remote desert communities started noticing things. Just odd things. Low-flying night helicopters, unidentified military convoys. Suddenly, normal desert routes they used were restricted. And the breaking point? It happened when a local shepherd, literally just a guy out in the dunes, spotted suspicious military movement and decided to alert Iraqi authorities. Minutes later, as Iraqi security units approached the area to investigate, they were hit by an alleged Israeli airstrike. Think about that. A highly classified geopolitical secret completely exposed by a shepherd in the night.
Now, this cover-up carried an immediate and very deadly cost. According to the reports we're analyzing, at least one Iraqi soldier was killed during that exact confrontation. Israeli forces allegedly initiated the strike against the approaching Iraqi units in a desperate bid to preserve the absolute secrecy of the installation. Faced with an unexpected, heavy bombardment from an unknown source out in their own desert, the remaining Iraqi forces were forced to withdraw. This was the moment the secret turned deadly, and sadly, the moment Iraq was unwillingly dragged right onto the front line.
And this brilliantly illustrates the immediate diplomatic fallout over in Baghdad. Iraqi officials were furious, and they wasted no time condemning the operation. I mean, they viewed this as a blatant, aggressive violation of Iraqi sovereignty. To have foreign military forces essentially annexing a portion of your territory to use as a covert launchpad for regional attacks, that is a massive breach of international norms. As this Iraqi military official plainly stated, the operation was entirely uncoordinated and bypassed Iraqi authority completely. The fallout from this single chaotic event immediately destabilized diplomatic channels across the entire region.
You really have to understand the incredibly fragile position this puts Iraq in right now. They are caught in a terrifying geopolitical squeeze. Just geographically speaking, they're sandwiched right between Iran and Israel, the two main antagonists of this entire shadow war. On top of that, Baghdad is constantly having to navigate intense American political and military influence while simultaneously trying to manage powerful internal armed groups that are operating within its own borders. With the exposure of the space, Iraq is literally facing accusations of weakness from all sides simultaneously. They've been unwillingly transformed from a sovereign nation into a covert launchpad and potentially the main battleground of a conflict that could easily draw in global superpowers.
As you'd expect, the exposure of the base triggered an immediate, intense regional reaction. On one side, you have Iran's Revolutionary Guards Corps issuing stern, repeated warnings that any Israeli military expansion near Iranian borders would be treated as a direct provocation. The temperature was already boiling. And then, on May 9th, sheer panic sets in. Over in Israel, missile defense systems suddenly and aggressively activated near the northern town of Metula. Sirens are echoing across communities, interceptor missiles are launching into the night sky, and civilians are rushing for shelter. The tension was so incredibly high that a single radar blip was enough to send the entire region into a defensive frenzy.
But here is where that May 9th incident gets truly terrifying. That radar target that triggered all those interceptor missiles, it suddenly vanished from the screens. Poof, gone. Now, some reports suggest it might have been a false detection or maybe a technical malfunction, but the panic was entirely justified because of the object's reported trajectory. Accounts state the anomaly was headed straight for Israel's Negev desert, specifically targeting the highly sensitive Dimona nuclear facility. So what actually happened? We have to ask, was this a genuine probe by Iran to test defenses? Was it an advanced electronic warfare tactic? Or was it literally just a glitch caused by a defense system operating under enormous, unprecedented pressure?
Let's move to the northern border with Lebanon and see how this builds, because the escalation absolutely didn't stay contained to Iraq and the Negev. It rapidly ignited. Step 1. Hezbollah began claiming dozens of daily attacks on Israeli positions. Following this, we saw a terrifying technological evolution. Highly produced propaganda ominously titled, "We will hunt you down," and it showcased advanced first-person view drones targeting armored units with just unsettling precision. In response to that, Israeli strikes inside southern Lebanon intensified dramatically, making May 8th one of the deadliest days in months. And finally, Israeli strikes reportedly reached Beirut again, breaking a long-standing unwritten ceasefire regarding the capital city.
The conclusion here is absolutely inescapable. The old rulebook, it's been torn to shreds. For decades, there were very clear red lines. There were boundaries to the shadow war. You don't build bases in unconsenting third-party countries. You don't strike capitals. You maintain plausible deniability. But the events surrounding this Desert Shadows outpost, the rapid escalation of drone warfare in Lebanon, and the sheer volume of cross-border strikes, all of it signals a permanent departure from those previous norms of engagement. Both sides are clearly communicating, out in the open, that the gloves are officially off.
So let's zoom out for a second and look at the broader geopolitical chessboard, because the entire region is quite literally on the brink. Iraq, as we've seen, is being violently pulled deeper into a struggle it desperately wants no part of. Iran looks at bases popping up in Iraq and feels a dangerous, encroaching encirclement. Meanwhile, Israel is dealing with drones in the north and threats from the east, facing what it perceives as existential, multi-front threats. And of course, we cannot ignore the role of the United States, which now faces intense international and domestic scrutiny over what it actually knew about this covert base, and exactly when it knew it. Every single major player here is operating under extreme paranoia and exceptionally high stakes.
Which brings us to the ultimate, unresolved question of today's explainer. Is the Desert Shadows installation just a launchpad for future targeted operations? Or is the exposure of this base the exact spark that will ignite an uncontrollable regional war? The shadows that once hid this conflict are rapidly disappearing, and the intelligence we've walked through today paints a really stark picture of a world standing right on the edge. I want to thank you for joining me as we unpacked these critical sources. It's a highly complex, rapidly evolving situation, and understanding the structure of these events is absolutely key to seeing the bigger picture. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll see you in our next explainer.